Hi, this is Gadget. This episode of The Waters of Mars ran long for the Who Knew podcast. There was so much to discuss, observe, and point out. Plus there were people conferenced in. 2 of them were from the East Coast. The technology involved with connecting everyone introduced its own challenges. What was a 3-hour discussion has been boiled down to about an hour and a half. Stay tuned to the end of the episode to hear some of the technical difficulties that were experienced. Enjoy The Waters of Mars by the Who Knew podcast.
Welcome to Who Knew. We are fans of the current series of Doctor Who, and here we discuss our likes, dislikes, and insights into the modern regeneration of the show. Subscribe, review, and listen to us on iTunes and Stitcher, or our YouTube channel, youtube.com/WhoKnewPodcast. All our episodes are on WhoKnewPodcast.com. You can leave comments there, or email us at WhoKnewPodcast@gmail.com. We also have an Instagram and Twitter account. Tweet at us at WhoKnewPodcast, and find us on Facebook. Today's episode is the third of the 2008 to 2010 specials entitled The Waters of Mars.
Is there life on Mars?
The Doctor has to decide whether to intervene with a fixed point in time or change history and embrace the power that is being a Lord of Time. This episode is written by Russell T. Davis and Phil Ford, directed by Graham Harper. It originally aired on the 15th of November 2009 and was watched by 10.32 million viewers. Hi, this is Eugene. Let's introduce ourselves.
This is Josh.
This is Brian.
This is Kelsey Victorious.
Hello, this is Auburn.
Hi, my name is Arlene.
This is Heather.
And this is Frank, but I like to call this episode The Waters of Mars.
Glad everybody dressed up for the new year.
And the shooting at the guns.
Well, you look very handsome, guys.
These guys in the back.
Behind the TV.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. What year is this?
2019.
Okay.
You better make it through this one, too.
Those cavemen go.
The Doctor arrives on Mars, and as he overlooks an early Earth outpost, he gets arrested by a robot named Gadget. It takes him to the outpost, where Captain Adelaide Brooke and her crew discuss what to do with him. The Doctor discovers that they are the first humans on Mars, and this is Bowie Base One, a station that history says was destroyed on this date with no survivors.
I like the Bowie Base One reference to David Bowie.
Yes. It's hard to say sometimes, but I get it.
Bowie Base One?
Yeah, sometimes.
Bowie base.
Boy base.
Bowie
Base.
base.
Mama Bowie.
Toy Bowie.
Don't mention Bouillabaisse? Sorry. The whole gadget just reminds me of Tweaky.
Yeah.
Buck Rogers.
I have a feeling that's what it was referring to.
I have to say I'm not a big fan of the robot.
It's not in there a lot.
I'm not 7 years old.
Right.
I don't know the Tweaky reference.
It's a Buck Rogers television show from the 80s.
And there's a robot in there that his name was Tweaky, and he would go Tweaky.
Bitty.
The Doctor.
Oh, he'd say Beady. He wouldn't say Tweaky.
Yeah, he said bitty.
The Doctor isn't a big fan of the robot either. So.
Yeah.
Just dog robots.
Yes, that was funny too when they mentioned that.
That's fine.
It started out fun. Well, I mean, I like this episode, but it started out, he seems excited to see a new planet, something new going on. The shot of the base that he's looking at looks pretty cool. It seems like it's going to be a nice little fun adventure.
It does seem that way, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
I thought it was odd that the TARDIS landed so far away from anything. Usually the TARDIS lands in the middle of the city or somewhere near where it needs to be. And this, for I think later on plot development, landed so far away from the base. And the Doctor didn't move the TARDIS, he decided to do a moonwalk for the mile or two to get there.
Well, Mars walk.
Right.
Interesting. I never thought about that. Maybe it was for its own safety. Mm-hmm. Not that it's ever worried about anything like that before.
I love the intro. What state your name, rank, and intention? The Doctor. Fun.
I like the cold open we got before this, before the doctor arrives. We see Adelaide Brooke talking to another woman who has a young daughter with her. And after watching the whole thing, it kind of is nice to see that again at the beginning. Like the whole generations of Brooks will come into play. And right from the beginning, you have her granddaughter on screen that the doctor will later talk about.
Right. It was a good setup to the world. Like it really... a lot of good exposition to set up what the situation is, how these people are talking to each other, what their life is like, without being people just spewing exposition through dialogue.
It also establishes that their communication is cut off because of the solar flares.
Right.
Yes, that'll play into effect later on. But I like that it's very much almost like a hard sci-fi feel to it. Like this is what would really be happening if technology progressed in the natural way. We would eventually be on Mars, and the space station looks very much, or the base looks very much like what I envision NASA would look like, as opposed to what they've had before, where it's all grimy and lived in.
Right.
It's all new. It's all sterile.
It looks more official than characterized.
Yes.
You get a real early sense of the characters' relationships between each other as well. The main... Adelaide, and then her second in command, they kind of are at odds a little bit, but they obviously have a history. Like this, we're definitely plopped into the middle of this little surrogate family rather than a forced introduction to each person.
Yeah, they definitely seem to be like people that existed before the story began, and which is great. And I think that's a very Russell thing to do. It just makes them a little bit more three-dimensional. We don't know what happened, but something happened because that's what happens with people.
Kind of reminds me of the Satan Pit. These people obviously have relationships, and
we learned that they've been in their present on the base for about 2 years in the first video call. So it's fun being so close to our current history, where they're not like traveling to other stars yet. This is really in the realm of a possibility for us,
like near future possibilities.
Right. But they're still like, it's not the first day there. They've been there for long enough that they've all settled in. They know their roles, and hopefully they thought all the surprises were worked out. And now they're just kind of doing the grinding mission work of being on Mars for, I guess, 7 years total was
something
their mission.
Like that, yeah.
And it's at the end of this cold open, or this little bit here, where the doctor we see in his memory that the station has been destroyed. Is that?
Yes, with the flashes of the new the internet articles, I guess.
Right.
Web pages.
TARDIS Wikipedia or Time Lord Wikipedia in his brain.
Well, I was almost wondering if that's how the doctor always recalls information, because he's always spewing information when it comes to dates and historical events.
I read that once.
I read this once.
Right, I read this once, or I knew that, and all the stuff, and all the recall that he has. So I guess in a way, yeah, that's interesting that we get to see what he's experiencing about being a Time Lord, because there are a lot of episodes that would have done that exact same scene without seeing that, just going by what he says. But I think that was a good touch with this episode, because it made it relatable to us.
It was good exposition, quickly done.
Yeah. Also, too, what year was this?
2009.
To another 2009.
The year that this episode takes place,
2009.
or
2059.
2059. So the internet will still be around.
But I think the whole vibe of that aspect of it is supposed to be like the Challenger. That's kind of what it made me think of.
It also reminded me of Back to the Future with the photo. It changes at the end.
Right.
So I just see it as similar to the photo in Back to the Future.
No, it's a good gimmick.
In the biodome section of the station, Maggie and Andy are tending to the plants. Andy pulls a bunch of carrots from the soil, washes them off, and takes a bite. He convulses and turns on Maggie, with his mouth all cracked and water pouring out of it.
Man, does he like those carrots?
Somebody needs some chapstick.
Love this creepy bit. I love when any of this Doctor Who stuff goes creepy and horror-like.
Yeah, the way they did the transformation, it's out of focus and not in the main center. It just makes your imagination go. I love it.
And also, too, the convulsions that the actor was going through is so unhuman-like. Like, I always think of the auditions.
Yeah.
I got a real laugh out of how that guy looks at those carrots. These buttes or beauties, whatever he calls them. Like, that's some close-up acting.
Well, they haven't eaten much of that.
Yeah. First
I
vegetable
know.
he's seen in 18 months.
It's just funny.
The character of Andy, I paused on his Wikipedia article while the doctor was recalling it. And it says he grew up, I think, in Iowa.
On a carrot
You
farm?
have it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, not a carrot farm, but in like a commune. So he was uncharacteristically naive or innocent before going to this Mars trip.
Oh,
so
that's sad.
I
Do
thought
you
that
mean
was-
uncharacteristically?
Yes, I do.
What's up, Doc?
So that was interesting to have him be that like dopey, innocent character that's the
Yeah.
first to turn.
bite it.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yes.
So
Everybody catching all these?
Yes. I actually watched that bit twice. I wanted to catch the moment that he got infected, and it must have been when he bit the carrot when he ate it.
Well, I think no. When we see him wash the carrot, don't we?
He washes it. Maybe.
So it's when he's touching
okay,
the water
okay.
coming out of the spigot.
Very good, very good.
The whole vibe of this episode. I'm not a horror movie person.
I am.
See, I'm not, but I really love the way this episode feels. Like, it creeps me out in the ways that I like to be creeped out. And I'm like you, Josh. I've seen this episode maybe like at least 4 or 5 times. And I still put down everything that I was doing and paid super close attention to it because I was like, and I got the same vibes and the same feels, and I was laughing and I was crying. I really like this episode, if you couldn't tell.
The doctor plans to leave the station so as not to alter what is about to happen when the crew contacts the biodome. Instead of contacting either Maggie or Andy, all they hear is an animal growl, and then that section's power goes out. Thinking the doctor is somehow involved, Captain Brooke orders the doctor's spacesuit locked up and insists he accompany her to check out why that section lost power. Along with the station's doctor, Tarek, they head down a corridor and find an unconscious Maggie with a head wound. Yuri, the nurse, and Ed, the second in command, arrive to help. They place Maggie in isolation while the captain and both doctors proceed to the biodome. The captain orders Gadget, who is controlled by junior tech Roman Groom, to stay and keep watch.
Why did they hear an animal growl in this episode? Does it ever growl again?
Yeah, we hear it as they're
No.
running around a bit, I think.
No.
And then Maggie, she howls to them later on.
But
Screams.
Andy and Tarek are the only. They like go full alien with the eyes and everything. So
Yeah.
they do get kind of. I kind of always viewed it as they get very animalistic.
They mention
Maggie doesn't fully do that until the end.
I really like that turn when the doctor realizes what's going on, and he says, I can't be here, I have to go. And it's such a somber heart, and but he's really not showing a good poker face at all when to stare someone in the face. And then he goes and he says thank you to everybody, and he basically is making it so obvious it's weird.
You're so young.
Yes. Yeah, I mean it's great, and I understand why they do it because it helps the story, but I also feel like, what are you doing, man?
I do like that he takes the time to fanboy over them, though.
Right, yeah.
I do enjoy that.
I think it's more for his own benefit. It's his own mantra. Like, I really need to get out of here. I really need to go. Go, doctor. Go now.
Well, because it's the opposite of everything he ever does.
You know what's interesting? It just made me realize, without a companion there to help, like, this is usually a decision he doesn't make alone.
True.
It's true.
And now he had to, and he kind of failed. Although usually he ended up making the decision the companions usually do.
It's true.
When I think these episodes show really well why he needs to have a companion.
Yes.
For sure.
Especially at the end of this episode.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference from the classic. He didn't need that from the companion. He was able to make the
Right.
decisions. He was able to do all that, and the companion was to, be the TV viewer and get the explanation of what's going on, and just be there to hand him extra little things. But I mean, they did have some good roles and some good companions, but it wasn't that the doctor needed that from them. They were just exploring their own personality.
Is that?
But that's something that's very different with this, the new Who. I mean, starting with Rose, like we said at the beginning, it almost was her story. The doctor was a secondary character. It was the companion's story, companion's journey.
I kind of feel like the 10th Doctor is the most conflicted out of all of them in that regard. Like, even though Rose had a huge impact on the stories and everything with the 9th Doctor, he still would have done everything he did, mostly. It seems to be the 10th Doctor is the one who's battling his own inner demons as constantly, and kind of like that the companion keeps him in check, more so than Eccleston. But Tennant seems to be the one that goes real deep and dark. He's kind of bipolar.
He's the sensitive one.
Yes. He's the artist.
They're all different. All renditions of the Doctor have their thing. Okay,
Right.
that's his thing.
Right.
I'm the opposite of you, Heather.
Oh.
Really?
And a lot of things just. I think the main reason is I think it needed to be a two-parter. It needed to flesh out some more things in there that just jumped for me too quickly. And I didn't like some of the directing, some of the editing. It just pulled me right out. We'll get to it later on as it comes up. But parts of it that were bugging me here is they've been traveling together for 2 years. The first 6-7 months was just trying to get to Mars, and they've been here for like a year and a half. Ed knows his position, and he just grabs something and runs. And both Steffi is like, you can't leave. You're in charge right now. You can't leave this. And the captain were like, what are you doing here? This is not your job. You have to get back to the base. And it seems like that should have been fleshed out more because I don't understand their relationship at all. I know they have a past relationship. I think the actors were good on that, but it just didn't fit to me going, he's been at this job for long enough. He knows what it is. Why would you remind him if he's going to go? Because that's...
Yeah, I feel like...
He is that wild card doing whatever he wants and screw the rules.
I got the feeling, I think I got a strong, I know what you're saying, but I got actually a strong sense of they had something go on between them, and that's why he's not listening to her, whether it was like an affair or something like that. Like something went on that, because the looks, the energy they shared between each other told me this is why he's not listening to her, not because he's not being a good soldier or whatever you want to call it.
Or maybe it's as simple as that's why they have this conflict between the two of them, because he's constantly leaving. He's constantly forgetting his place.
Well,
he's constantly forgetting his responsibility and doing things like this, like leaving the main...
But I don't think they would. I don't think such a big operation would hire a fellow like that.
Well, maybe he didn't start out that way.
Right, maybe he's getting space madness.
Yeah.
Steffi saying, you can't leave. I mean, was that her going, I don't want to be in charge?
I get what you're saying. It's just hard to get all that story out. That you do what you can.
See, I kind of love the fact
They
that
did mention that Annie was going wild, so I guess that is something that has been established with space travel that we've done in the next 50 years. That people go wild.
Oh, really? I didn't catch that.
I just think they're bored.
Cabin fever.
Yeah, cabin
Yeah,
fever.
cabin fever for sure.
Space madness.
Also, these people have probably been developing more of a family relationship than a professional relationship the longer this goes on. And maybe that's not realistic, but I mean, they're humans at the end of the day, and they've been living together in tight quarters, so...
This is what happens when things stop being real. What is it?
Stop being nice.
Stop being rude.
Stop being nice.
Stop being nice
real.
and start being real. It really depends on what people want out of a story. I think Frank wants to see more of this and needs a little bit more, whereas I'm like, oh, there it is. Something's going on. Okay, move on.
Right.
Yeah, I'm with you, Josh. And I think this is a good way to quickly establish that these are three-dimensional characters.
I will say it is abrupt in the beginning.
It is.
Because you're just jumped in with the Doctor.
Yeah.
So.
As opposed to like maybe if it's sprinkled there, you'd be like, hey, what's going on there? And then something happened. Maybe then, Frank, you'd feel a little bit more like it led to that. But right off the bat, these official people who have been given the responsibility of planet Earth aren't behaving well.
Well, but
I think
also look at
Heather's
their
right in that
boss.
they're more familiar with each other, family, because the captain does tell Maggie, when we're on open comms, you call me captain. And I don't think she would have if somebody else wasn't there.
Right. Well,
The
also,
stranger
yeah,
that
because
showed
everything
up.
that's on open comms gets recorded and sent back.
But what we're
I think
shown of
it would've
Adelaide
been a little more active,
very
of course.
quickly in the beginning is that she's very hard-lined
Yeah.
when she wants to be.
Yeah.
And it seems annoying
Yeah.
to everybody else. So I can kind of see everybody getting like a family aspect.
Whatever,
underneath
Mom.
Her.
Yeah.
Underneath her. Yeah. Like, yeah. Oh, Mom's at it again.
But she's got, I also got the impression this time watching it, like, she's got to be that way because this,
Oh, yeah, she's the boss.
People, if she's not a hard ass, people will forget and become more of a family. And you can't question orders if I'm telling you to do something.
I love Adelaide.
And where have we seen her before, Eugene?
You're going to jump there now?
You know I always do.
Captain Adelaide Brooke is played by Lindsay Duncan, and previously she was Servilla in Rome. She was also in Black Mirror. She was Queen Annis in Merlin, Tabitha in Birdman, Lady Smallwood in Sherlock, and the episodes she was in were The Lying Detective, The Six Thatchers, and His Last Vow.
And wasn't she in About Time?
Yes, she's the mother.
And she got a top billing with David Tennant in the main title. I don't think
Yes.
anyone else did in this episode.
No, it was just her
Just
and-
her.
Because she's the companion for this special.
Quotes, yeah.
This is also the time that has one of my favorite moments in all of Doctor Who, and the Doctor and Adelaide are going down the corridor, and he says, "I've always wanted to know, was it worth it? You know, you did all these sacrifices, gave up family, friends, to leave Earth. Was it worth it?" And she says my favorite line in all of Doctor Who, basically is to stand on a planet where the only straight line is the sunlight. Yes, it was worth it.
Yeah, I have that noted too. And then the Doctor replies with the woman with starlight in her soul. It's just a great follow-up to that awesome line. And I like that she mentions all the hardships that she had to overcome, and it's humanity rising above the strife. It just reminds me of like we're better than that. And I'm projecting something else onto that personally. Mm-hmm. Like bringing back like the Star Trek, we overcome war, poverty.
Yeah.
You know, and then we reach for the stars and we join other people out there. Mm-hmm. That's what that reminds me of. I just love those word pictures that they paint with those sayings.
She did say that we almost reached extinction. And to me, it's more of we're in that process of getting out of that, and we are exploring Mars. But there's still the conflict about, the Philippines, or who else is on this planet. Who else could this be? Where did the Doctor come from? Which other group sent him? But we're trying to, as a culture, get past that and expand out into space, into Mars.
I got a kick out of that, how they were saying like, well, if it's going to be someone else from Earth, it's got to be the Philippines. So their fantastic space program.
Like that does not exist. But also, it just reminds me of other extraterrestrial events uniting humanity. Frank, like with Robotech, when the spaceship crashes on the island, they stop all the wars and they start reverse engineering this crashed spaceship so that they can travel into space. So, I mean, those two lines just really remind me of all of that sci-fi stuff that I love.
Steffi Ehrlich, the senior tech, analyzes the animal growl and identifies the voice print as Andy's. The Doctor restores power to the dome as the three search for him. Dr. Tarek finds a soaked Andy, who splashes him with water. Meanwhile, Maggie wakes up in the isolation chamber but doesn't remember what has happened. Yuri reminds her that protocol is to keep her in there for 24 hours. As he watches an old video from his brother, she convulses in the same way as Andy. Yuri sees this and calls the captain, telling her that water is pouring out of Maggie.
And I like how this transformation is done the same way that Andy's transformation was done. It's in your focus is on the foreground with Yuri, and she's in the background doing all this wonderful acting and transforming where it's just creepy.
And the foreground person is on the left, and the background person is on the right. It's basically the same exact shot.
And I like that we get it twice, and like, uh-oh, stakes are climbing and rising.
I didn't know where I was going to say it in the podcast, but I'll just say it now. What a nightmare that must have been to film. All the water, the actors in the water, on the face, just must have been. You've got prosthetics on your face already, and now you've got water.
And all the rig.
It just, every time I see that, it's like, did the guys get...
I was just going to say that the makeup and the prosthetics were done amazingly.
Yeah.
Yeah, some behind the scenes on the Doctor Who Confidential, they went through multiple passes on how to crack this problem because it just was not working. See, I'm glad you got that one. Because the first pass, they wanted a wig so that it would come down from their forehead. And then the actors were like, well, we can't see. It's all in our eyes. And then so they came around to a solution where it came just out of their mouth so that they could still see when they were running and doing all this other stuff.
However they did it. And just the thing that, like, the human relatability part is walking around in soaking wet clothes just looked so uncomfortable.
Day in and day out for filming.
But the fact that, like, that was the alien was a sopping wet person, just like you knew what it felt like in those clothes, but they were an alien, and then their cracked face. Like, everyone's had horrible chapped lips, and even though this is a totally different thing, just there was a lot of like relatability.
I do love the fact that, don't touch her, don't touch her, don't touch her. I know the protocol, and then he touches her.
Wait, what?
I don't think I noticed that.
Tarek touches Maggie when they find her in the hallway.
With the head.
Oh, the protocol. You know, the doctor says, "Don't touch her." He's like, "I know the protocol."
And then he rolls her over.
And then he rolls her over.
This section is where it really loses me. I thought they must have had such problems that they just let in bad editing, and because the editing of Maggie was really badly done. She was changing when you saw her face, and supposedly before she actually changed, you could see it all being wet. They used a different video from what she was saying, talking about Earth, and it's like she's already done, and he didn't notice it when he was looking at her. And then she starts convulsing, and all the water shows up. And when they cut back to the wide shot and then to the close-up, her hair is different, her face is different, her expression, everything. And to me, it just pulled me right out, going, they're just really doing a bad take on this. It gets me.
I'd have to watch it again to see all the little things you're noticing, but
Yeah,
I'm sure that's all attributed to the special effects.
I mean, I've seen this episode at least once, and I haven't noticed any of that.
I've actually noticed a handful of film gaps like that throughout the series and stuff, so I kind of forgive the series for some things like that because it is a certain type of production. But yeah, you're right, Frank. Once you see something like that on a show, you can't unsee it.
Yeah, I agree with Frank. Why is she wet already?
Right.
Why is she doing that? Why is her hair that way? It's like if she had the makeup on, but they had to take it off and they had to put it back on. It really took me out of it as well.
For me, I attribute that as, when things get wet, it's hard to dry. So I kind of forgave them for that because I was already invested in the story and just being, wrapped up in the horror aspect of it. So I didn't really mind.
Is there life on Mars?
Adelaide and the doctor find Andy and Tarek, who chase them to the airlock. Once on the other side, they watch as Andy and Tarek attack the airlock door with water, searching for a way into the rest of the station. As they are on their way back to the main dome, the captain orders all water supplies shut off. Don't touch the water, not even a drop. As Andy and Tarek break through the airlock and chase after them, the doctor alters Gadget so it can travel super fast, allowing them to escape from the infected.
Okay, Frank, I'll give you this
moment
one.
ever.
When the water comes spouting out of their faces like a fire hose. Pretty.
Yeah, it's not the best.
Something else.
The animation of that.
And the whole Gadget super speed robot jet fire engines Batmobile out the back of the robot. No, that didn't
Also
happen.
leaving the fire trail behind, like the DeLorean.
That didn't happen. I reject that utterly.
It did have a little flashback to he and Donna, in the Thames.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
But that movement, they did it for tongue-in-cheek, and they wanted to be funny. This wasn't.
This is for kids.
They did say that Roman made the Gadget out of the other...
The spare parts
of the machines that made the whole place.
The heavy lifters.
And that they could have the strength of 15 tons. So maybe this was the doctor tapping into that strength, using it as propulsion. One thing I did really like was that the water coming out of Andy's mouth when they found him and it was cold, and then the cold vapor coming out of Adelaide and the doctor. I thought that was really cool, having the water dripping out and just coming out, and theirs was still water vapor coming out of the humans or the Time Lords. I like that little analogy. Maybe it's just me seeing that in there, that they weren't that far off, where you can see why water was so important to the human body, how much water we have. We do that because of our breath in the cold. You can see it. We still expel some water vapor.
Yeah, and while Adelaide and the doctor are in the airlock, they mention that the humans are made up of 60% water, the perfect host. And then they're like, for what? Like, hope we never find out, Right. I was like, that's cool to set up something that I don't necessarily need to pay off. I kind of like that.
I found the scary part of this section to be kind of like the Terminator scares, that because when they, aside from the parts where they were running, they were just this slow, relentless force coming at them. These two beings that were reasonably robotic or didn't have like humanity to them. And I also really like the running gag of how the doctor can't understand why they don't have bikes.
Yeah.
And I have to say, as an American, when Adelaide and the doctors see Andy and Tarek, no, I'm not putting the gun down. That maybe there's the American in me, but no, I'm keeping the gun up for now. I just won't shoot. Is that good enough?
They also, at this point, mentioned the Ice Warriors, which is a classic Who villain.
Yay!
And they are also from Mars, so that's why the doctor would think of them.
I believe they were introduced with the second Doctor.
Correct. And we will see them in a future Doctor.
Is that something that could possibly be tied into this episode, or is he just...
There is something I'll bring up at the end because it's
Okay.
a deleted scene.
I don't like the directing or editing of how they run, both those infected and those who not. It seems like they only built maybe 20 feet, and so there's that
totally.
slow Batman 60s running where we can't actually get anywhere. It has that weird feel to it, and I didn't get that those who are infected were running faster, where they're running the same speed as Gadget.
Now that you're talking about it more, this episode is filled with reasonably low budget TV production problems. So, and I've noticed them too, but I don't know. Like, I don't expect much from Doctor Who in that regard. Like, to me, that's the same thing as the Daleks have a plunger sticking out of them.
There's the low grade that you have to do and doing what you can do badly. They have a limited amount of money and limited what to do, and I think dealing with water is always going to be a harder issue, and it cannot be a cheap episode because of that.
I have a feeling they did the best with what they had. I'm not defending it at all, but like if you're someone who's distracted by that, then like this ain't the show for you.
Also, remember, this was only the second episode they ever filmed in HD. And I do have to say, the first time I saw this one in HD, I was disappointed. I actually liked it a little bit less because everything was sharper and clearer, which made it look more flimsy. So I actually prefer this one in SD.
What I really like about this episode is just the characters. Just I feel there's a real richness to, like we said earlier, that the characters have their own relationships between each other. You really felt like each of them had their own job. I think the relationship that forms between the Doctor and Adelaide is really good, and she starts to kind of... So by the time it all comes out, she's clued in enough to believe what he's saying about time travel and the death of her death and her daughter and the history and all that stuff. So I feel like there's a lot there, and at the end of the episode, how heavy the emotion is, it's a definite... It earns it in the panic of everyone towards the end of the episode. Like, so that's what... And the creepy vibe of all the creepy setups that we've been talking about. Like, that's what sells it for me. But it is rife with inconsistencies of speed and someone's makeup, or the speed they're running, or the shot, the angle that the things are happening. It's a mess. But I don't know. This is one of my favorite episodes, and to me, it's because of all those other things.
I agree.
Well, yeah, and it's hit or miss. It's sometimes a Doctor Who episode is like this, and sometimes it's not. So, but the story's good.
Yeah, I agree.
That's what matters.
It also could be, like Brian was saying, a factor of the HD. Like, a lot of things that you get away with, like makeup for like 2 or 3 years was totally inconsistent when HD first came about. Like, just facial makeup, not even prosthetics. Like a lot of the things you're talking about, but like, they won't notice that it's moving at a different speed in the background here because SD, the grain of the video will cover that up. And now that it's HD, it's like, oh my God, this is not working. We have to sort of rethink what we're doing.
Yeah, you and Brian make a good point. I think that could be part of why this is going on and why I see it so much.
They go to the infirmary, and the Doctor speaks to Maggie in ancient northern Martian, which she seems to recognize. The captain tells him that they get their water from a huge underground glacier. Whatever is infesting the crew has to be in the water. Ed and the captain activate Action 1, evacuation of the base. Steffi says it will take 3 hours to load the shuttle for a 9-month journey home, but the captain gives her 20 minutes.
Make that 15.
The Doctor reminds the captain that water is patient. Maggie didn't show signs that she was infected until after she was trapped in isolation. Any one of them can already be infected, and they can't be brought to Earth. The captain goes to try and find out how the infection began. The Doctor tells himself again to leave, but he doesn't. Instead, he follows the captain.
It's the Doctor's curiosity that has stayed constant throughout this run. He wants to know what's happening, and it'll be a bad thing in this case.
Right, and it's also a piece of history that we do know. Like, if we were only in Hitler's bunker,
Right,
Or if
it's
we
like,
were,
yeah.
it's like, oh my God, or maybe, and then later on we find out it was his ego that basically was more motivating him. But it is that. I love the whole run of the whole water is patient thing. Erosion.
I do too.
equating it to erosion, everything like that. Water is patient, water always wins.
Yeah, especially when it's later, when she says it's like, this is 10 something of combination steel. I'm like, well, water's going to get through that too.
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
I do like the scene between Adelaide and Ed. It shows that they have a history and they have a past of how they communicate. And there's some kind of respect there, even if they don't like each other. I think the actors, do have a good working knowledge of what's going on and who their character is. So I do like a lot of those scenes.
Yeah, at the beginning we were talking a little about how they had become too familiar with each other, but as soon as a real crisis hits, we see everybody become a professional. Like everyone's doing their jobs. Later when they're shuffling the protein packs around, it's call response. It's very military, NASA
Training.
Yeah, everything kicks in and people act really professional, which is refreshing. Often in these kind of space horror, we see people act stupid, and that's what causes...
That's a good point. No stupid person went into the dark closet or basement in this episode.
And
everyone was very...
That helps it feel like they are professionals. Yeah. And later, we'll get to it, but when Roman sacrifices himself, that's also like... you expect like, oh, somebody got infected and they're not going to tell anybody and then they're going to sneak on board, but...
that goes along with the whole idea of that this crew are heroes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You got to figure the first people to go to Mars, they would choose them carefully. You would think.
Yes, most likely.
Okay, you guys are going to hate me again, but...
Here we go!
Every time I try and get into this show and, having a good scene between the characters, which I wanted more of, then the director or the cinematographer, I think mostly director, they had Steffi and Mia come in carrying things and they both stop at the exact second as they walk. And it just was such awesome powers. They stop, zoom in, kind of look as the two women turn their heads to look. It just was an odd setup.
See, I've never noticed that, so I'm going to have to watch this with like Frank Vision and just see all these things.
Oh, don't do it to yourself.
What was the Asian girl's name again?
Mia.
The only funny thing I noticed, besides the weird running, I did see that, was that everybody was lifting like a bunch of stuff, and then Mia picked up like one protein pack, and I was like, "Good job, girl. Good job. You did a good job over there. Thanks for your help." Other than that, though, I'm with Josh in that I was so into the human relationship of this episode that I didn't even pick up on all your stuff, Frank.
Frank Vision.
But I do want to watch it again, like you said.
No, you don't.
Or maybe I don't. I don't want it to be ruined. I don't want it to be ruined for me because I really like this episode.
There's also like the number one thing that creeps me out in this episode is people who get taken over, like their consciousness gets taken over, and then they have creepy eyes. Like even Maggie, whose eyes didn't change, like the actress's way of behaving, like that's the number one thing that creeps me out. So that's gonna trump any other like foibles that the episode may have.
And surprise, I hated that. I hated her wide-eyed look.
I found it creepy.
It's funny because when Andy and Tarek are taken over and they have the contact lenses, I found Maggie more creepy, just being normal-eyed but still having that like 1,000-yard stare with the water just coming out of her mouth.
I agree. I think that actress is really good. Have we talked about this episode before, like on the Halloween episode or something?
Yes, we
Yeah,
have.
we have mentioned it.
Okay, because I'm having deja vu here, so.
Well, if we're ever in like a haunted situation, we put Frank up front.
Deal.
Oh, that brings back memories. I was always put in front for a haunted house.
It's okay. He's tall enough to block all of our...
Right.
It also works in airports and
that's
crowded
okay.
subways.
Oh, but good to know.
The doctor tells the captain that what happens here is fixed and must happen. He says that she begins the human expansion in space by inspiring others like her granddaughter. Adelaide remembers the day the Earth moved through the sky and she saw a Dalek. It was the moment she knew she would venture out into space. They discover through Andy's log that a water filter broke the previous day, but the replacements didn't fit. Since it takes a week for water to transfer out of the biodome, the rest of the crew are unaffected and they can leave. They make their way back to the main dome where she gives the doctor his suit and tells him to leave. Everyone frantically prepares to load the rest of the supplies onto the shuttle. Maggie breaks out of containment and lets out a blood-curdling scream. Andy and Tarek respond to her scream by making their way to the roof of the main dome and begin generating an enormous amount of water. I was going to say, this flashback of Adelaide's is, I don't know. I like that it ties back into the rest of Doctor Who with Journey's End. And then the Doctor... To me, the Doctor knows her story because he's probably read it on Wikipedia in the future. And he's allowing her the space to tell her story, or tell him his story. Because she goes, I know I would follow it, referring to the Dalek, but not for revenge. What would be the point of that? And I just thought that was really beautiful.
And she's all teary, too.
Yeah,
amazing acting.
Because, like, to me, I would immediately want to kill something that would be responsible for killing my parents. So to have her take something tragic and make something beautiful out of it is poetic. I don't know. It was something unexpected in this horror genre episode.
When I saw that scene, it made me think, there's no way in hell that a Dalek wouldn't kill her. And then it comes back later on in the episode to give a bit of an explanation. So I like that. I like it answered my question. I thought, because at first I thought they were just being poetic for the sake of a story, and it was starting to lose me in that. But when it came back around plot-wise, I really enjoyed it.
I like how this showed her character and the kind of person she was. So it's more about exploration and finding something new, and life and death really didn't matter to her.
Yeah.
And it really set up what an impact that her and that crew had on the world, like he was talking about. So as melodramatic as it got, they kind of kept backing that up, and this was one of those instances.
And it is nice with her story about being inspiration for generations. Like, we see how long this story is taking. Like, even the Doctor at the beginning was like, for 40 years, you've wanted to come out to the stars. And it's actually been a 50-year journey for you. Like, your journey
Personally.
has been, from seeing that Dalek to today is a whole lifetime. And then your daughter will have another lifetime, and the granddaughter. And, all these human lives till we finally get somewhere outside of our solar system. It's a slow process, but it's neat that this episode is able to kind of touch that multi-generational story of leaving the Earth for the stars.
I do like the Doctor and Adelaide scenes. I think they both do it really well and work together well. But the fabrication of why the Dalek didn't shoot, I never bought.
Well, but if the Daleks have some sort of time travel, like, because I can't remember exactly where in the canon that they touch upon this, but there is a hint at Daleks have some sort of time travel capability.
Awareness.
Yeah, and when he says later on in the episode that it sensed that you are a fixed point in time, you can't be destroyed. So basically saying, if we destroy this person now, it's going to disrupt all these other things that can't be disrupted. So it's its own survival.
Okay, I can see the way you see that, and I'll definitely agree with that. But it just seems the way that they wrote it there was a lot more flowery, poetic.
Oh, right, in that scene, and I wasn't buying it either. I thought it was lazy storytelling until later on in the episode when he mentions that, and then I was like, oh, okay, that's why.
Okay, I think there's one thing we all can agree on, and that's Andy's an idiot. There's a filter there for a reason. You just, if it's broken, you gotta say something.
For sure.
Well, they sent him the wrong size replacements.
Yes, but you don't just continue going through the whole water without the filter that's supposed to be there.
That's a good point.
They wanted their Christmas dinner to include vegetables.
Knowing the crew won't make it, the Doctor begins to leave. At the airlock, Adelaide demands that he tell her what is going to happen. He says that she orders Action 5, detonating a nuclear device at the heart of the central dome. Earth will never know she did it to save them, and it is her death that inspired her granddaughter to take humanity into space. Her death is fixed in time, and it is today. He cannot save them. When called to help evacuate, she allows the Doctor to leave. Come on, this scene.
I love the airlock scene.
The airlock scene.
And what's great
this is out of Doctor's character, though.
Which airlock scene?
He's not the type that would tell someone what their future is.
Because
she's
he respects her
gonna die
too
in a
much.
minute.
Yeah, because he said right there, like, why are you telling me this? What did he say? Because so you know it's...
Because at this point he says, anything I try to do happens anyway. so I'm gonna... anything I do, I make it happen. Yeah, he's talking about Pompeii.
Yeah, but he still didn't tell the people of Pompeii that they were all gonna die.
No, but Adelaide could handle it.
Yeah, because to quote Men in Black, people are stupid, but a person is smart. He's not going to tell all of Pompeii that they're going to die. He's going to tell one person.
Yeah, he's not telling Mia and Yuri they're gonna die, but he can tell Adelaide. To me, this is very much in character
It
of
just
the
seemed
Doctor.
a little out of character.
But production-wise, I think it's great because they made the setup work that they could see each other on the monitors. So that wasn't like do one take and then project it onto the monitor and then do your version of that scene. So they were acting live based off of the screen time as opposed to being one place and one place on the other time. So I think it works. I like the acting in that moment.
I like the turn. Like because we had just gotten done watching the Doctor brooding over everything happening. And we're like, no, don't go. But then he chooses to go. Mm-hmm. And so we already have kind of let go of some of the tension there and think, oh, well, this is it. He's going to go leave and leave behind all this mess. But I love how Adelaide turns it on him like it's locked, and she has been listening to him and knows and wants the rest of the answers. While I agree, like the Doctor's personality in some of this, I don't agree with how it comes out. But this one moment, like it's really neat. Maybe not so much for the Doctor, but just for the story, how it all comes to a stop when. I wasn't expecting it the first time I saw it, to have Adelaide take the upper hand and have him in that locked room with, she could kill him if she wanted. He knows that she's not going to, but yeah, it is a really good moment.
And maybe I like this scene because maybe it is inconsistent with the Doctor's character, but this is for Adelaide to shine, I think. And the way that the Doctor gets her to release him, I think is just, to me, powerful. He mentions, imagine Pompeii. Anything I do, I make it happen. She says, you'll die here too, to the Doctor. What's going to save you? And he just replies, Captain Adelaide Brooke. And I was like, wow.
Is this also where he says he loved her when she didn't shoot Andy? Or was that earlier?
Yeah, I think this is it.
Yeah, like that is also very sweet from the Doctor.
I agree with you guys that it's a good scene. I think it is more character development, showing Adelaide being strong, having the Doctor's life pretty much in her hands, and knowing that she will release him. She's not a murderer, she's not a killer. And it's like, save yourself, I'll save this ship type of attitude. And I think it is a bit out of character, but that's what's going on with the Doctor right now.
Oh,
he
for
is
sure.
out of character. He is running and not knowing what's going on, and knowing that people have told him that he's going to die soon. His reincarnation is different. He thinks he's got one left. The way
because he's in like the stage of, I guess, when you deal with something, there's 7 stages or something. 5 stages. So he's in.
I have that written down in my notes.
Yeah. So he's actually in. This is the denial stage.
Yeah.
And then soon he's going to be in the anger stage.
Yeah, that's very soon.
And that's.
I would like. Is that something that they've talked about? Because I wonder if we look back on either the Tennant specials or since his prediction was told to him, if he actually goes through the 5 stages of grief, or
Well, this is the first time, because the he will knock 4 times happens at the end of Planet of the Dead.
So maybe the first stage is denial.
Yeah, and yes, I agree with Arlene that
the stages don't go in order.
Oh, it doesn't?
So psychologically, the stages don't have to go in order.
Oh, there you go.
They can go in any
Especially
way.
for a Time Lord.
That's true. Gallifreyans are
wibbly wobbly.
Yeah, they wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. But really, it's like, and then you can get to acceptance and go back to denial. So.
That
that's
sucks.
How grief goes. Yeah.
Oh, that explains so much. Because I see this is the Doctor's lowest point ever, because he rarely feels helpless. He rarely. Well, every time somebody dies around him, he treats that as he has failed. And this one, he's so over it. He's so done. So he does act out of character, but it's in character for me because he's so, what did I write? I said he's helpless, he's hopeless, he's useless. He's just at his lowest point, so he lashes out. And this is how he lashes out. And it's like, I'm lashing out by, I don't care about the future. I care about saving these people's lives. I freaking love it.
But I think Arlene's right in that he's not himself, and he's out of character, and just wait to the next section.
Water begins flooding the main area and covers Steffi. As Ed prepares the shuttle to launch, Maggie infects him. He destroys the shuttle before he can turn into one of them. A drop of water lands on Roman and he begins to change. The only ones left are Yuri, Mia, and the captain. As the doctor trudges toward the TARDIS, he can hear their final calls over the comm. Resolutely, he returns to the station. He is the lone Time Lord left in the universe, and the laws of time are now his to control.
How does the doctor hear what's happening over the comms?
Because
Did
they're
he
broadcasting.
Do something to,
It's in the script.
They're broadcasting it because
in the
he's wearing
script.
his own suit. It's not like his suit
Totally.
is
Yep, you're right.
connected
It's in the script.
to their.
Well, it could also be. I mean, the logic behind it is like a CB. A CB radio is on a channel. It's an audio channel being broadcast in the vicinity, so he's picking it up.
It was just so melodramatic, and I am someone who likes high drama like that, but this was just, to me, it was just too melodramatic. Him being able to hear everything that's going on.
But it would tear him
Because that
apart.
was also the uncharacteristic, I'm not used to the doctor walking away and not trying to do something up to the last minute. And then we see him go and do the exact thing that we expected him to do 5 minutes ago.
I love
don't
this
know.
moment.
God, I love this moment.
I think, but everything you're saying is exactly, I feel exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
The doctor is trying to do the quote unquote right thing, which, yes, does go against everything that he would normally do. And that's what makes it so hard. I love the struggle. I think the audio of them going through their motions, at everything's going wrong is terrifying. I think it's like hearing an actual 911 call, and it really creeps me out, but in the right ways in this case. And we had just seen Steffi's death, which was really heartbreaking. She knows she's going to die, so she turns on the video of her children, and oh my God. So as if that wasn't enough, then they go straight to this audio. The doctor's having this internal conflict, do I be me or do I do what I'm supposed to do? I don't know how you could not like this.
I think I was taken out of it because I didn't understand how he could hear them.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask. Is it possible that he's actually not hearing that, and that we're just hearing it, and that everything, and that his is just more internal?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I want to like the scene, and I just don't. And maybe that's what upsets me the most.
I love this scene. I love this scene because I feel like it's the actual situation where the doctor's being that hero that he never is. It's like the Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca.
The
walking
sacrifice.
away from what you want because you know it's right. And then he totally disappoints me when he runs back.
And now Frank.
I like this scene.
I did not expect that.
I did like this scene. I think it works either way, whether or not he can hear them through his comms in his helmet, or we're just hearing what's happening, in the base while seeing him walk away, because he already knows they're all going to die. So he doesn't need to have the specifics. He just knows he's leaving. So I did like a lot of that. But then the doctor becomes the master of time. In that what he wants, his way is the only way, and he's going to do anything because he has the power to do it. The power makes him right. And that's not something the doctor would ever do.
I think towards the end of the episode, when he's talking to her outside the door and all that stuff, I think he knows he's BSing himself.
Yeah.
But he can't take it. He's in
emotional.
enraged denial about his situation, and he lost all his friends. He has no one to kind of. I think he's in just such a state, emotional and psychological state. He's really screwed up at the moment.
He's very human.
I think we are. Yes, I don't disagree that he's out of character. It's I wish he did this. I wish he did that. But this character in this moment in this story is not himself. This is a journey that he is going through, and we can't put the same parameters that he usually has on him aren't on him in this regard. He's actually gone outside them. This is what happens when someone like the doctor gets strung out and pushed beyond his own personal limits. I was really touched by everything that happened this episode. But
I think that's why I didn't like
technically-
it, because it's not the doctor. He's became the master. He embraced power. Something the doctor
pendulum's got to
usually
swing,
does.
dude.
The thing that gets me is The doctor could have saved them and put them somewhere else in time to live out their lives so they didn't actually have to die.
The end of the episode doesn't say, and he was right. The end of the episode basically says, you really screwed up. It paints him in a bad light.
I see it as the universe's bitch slapping him.
Yeah. The point of the episode is what happens when a good man does bad. You have a problem with the editing, you have a problem with the microphone, this, that, and the other. No one has a problem with fire on the surface of Mars.
I do. I haven't. I said this. I think everything to blame is open flames on the surface of Mars.
Exactly.
That
Talk about
ruins the whole
manipulation
episode
for
for
the
me.
optical of him rising from the flames.
Right. I mean, when that happened, I was like, well, it fits the mood. Okay.
It does.
Yeah,
It totally
yeah.
fits the mood.
I mean, it's the
It
whole,
looks good on TV.
it's the whole Star Wars argument. You know, you can't have fire in space.
Or sound.
I don't think the things that are off kilter that you and Arlene are talking about. I think they're there, but I think that is also the point of them being there.
The only reason it's there is because this is the end of this season. This is the end of his
Yeah.
run.
Well, I also think
And
it's
manipulating it to be that. It just seems, at least for me, that's more manipulating rather than telling a good story.
well,
They
that's-
didn't earn it for you.
Correct.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
All right, I will jump in here. Some of the fans figured out that the waters of Mars can be rearranged to Wars of the Master.
What?
So that means
Wow.
something
What's Wars of the Master?
And
the
then
master's just-
bringing up Frank's point that he's turning into the
to the Master.
Oh,
And
It's like when you play that Beatles record backwards and they say Paul is dead.
I do agree with Frank that he's becoming master-like, but the master's completely and utterly selfish, and the only thing that the master's thing is he would save himself immediately no matter what. The doctor turning into the master and controlling what he can't control is doing it to save people. So that is still
That's how
a
it
fundamental...
starts, Brian.
Huh? That's how it starts?
That's how it starts. It starts with I'm doing this selflessly.
Right,
And then
but-
it turns into something selfish. So
Yes,
it's the beginning
totally.
of the end.
Yeah.
And that's why they had to get rid of this doctor you need a new personality, dude. Let's go.
Yes.
It's also... But
Yeah, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
But that's the point of the episode.
I
You
know.
know, I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's like they're taking him to a place that he hasn't been before. You know, because like you're saying, the 5 stages, and so I'm seeing him right now that when he's saying things like the laws will obey me. It's he's so emotional. He's desperately angry. He's lashing out. You can even make an argument that he's bargaining.
That's
I'm
one
going to
of the
save
other-
these 3.
that's one of the
I'm
other
going to
things.
save these 3, and the rules that I'm following were made by people who are gone, and I'm still here. So why should I still follow their rules? I don't have to. I'm this guy, and I've got the power, and I'm going to do it. And he finds out very quickly it doesn't work. That's perfect. That's a drama. We're seeing a flaw in his character that's fascinating to watch. Would I have wanted this to be a season-long arc of the Doctor being master-like? No. But seeing it in this one instance, especially coming after the season that he's just had, after, we are coming up to the 10th Doctor's, the end of his generation, and we know how the 10th Doctor is, he would react this way. I see nothing. I see this as the Doctor being in one of his most terrible points ever in this episode. But to me, it's still completely real for this Doctor.
Amen. Amen to that. I agree with you.
I got one.
I agree.
And now Frank. No, I'm just kidding.
And it is annoying. Don't get me wrong. When he's being all arrogant and stuff, you just want to smack him because he's being awful. He's being terrible.
Yeah, when the camera zooms in, he's like, "And I'm gonna win." I'm like,
We're in
It's
trouble.
not just that. It's like it's the perfect beginning to a villain.
Exactly.
It's the perfect
Yes,
beginning to
yes.
a
Yes,
villain.
it totally is. I totally, completely agree with you. And before the episode ends, he totally agrees with you too, and he gets it.
No.
No, he's still kind of
No.
villainy until he's gone.
All
At
right,
least,
kind of.
Frank, at least you and I understand each other.
Yeah. It's the loss of our hero. We're seeing the loss of our hero.
Yes, I'm not saying this is right. I'm just saying one, it's really interesting and it's very fun for me to watch. That's how I could react to it. And he also does, in the end, depending on where you define end, go, he knows what he did was wrong at the end. The Doctor had no other choice. It was either he had two things, too extreme: walk away or save them. He went back to save them.
He doesn't. He's the Doctor. He comes up with that third all the time, and he could have saved those people and brought them to Clum or to somewhere else or to the future to live out their life so they don't actually die, even though history would stay the same because the whole place would have blown up and everybody would assume they were dead.
Well, it's
he didn't have to save them and bring them back to Earth, altering history so she could be with her granddaughter and changing that fixed point in time.
Yes, he's wrong. Yes, very much so, he's wrong. But he's in an emotional state where he can't think like he normally does. So yes, to him, taking them to Clom, which by the way is what I said last night.
I know, it was funny. I had to use it in.
To him is not the answer, because then they're separated from their families. He doesn't want them separated from... It's not that he wants them to live... just that. It's he wants them to live and be with their families. He wants her to be with her daughter and her granddaughter. That's the life he wants for Adelaide. And you know what? If history gets screwed up, I'm the Lord of Time. I'll fix it some other way. That's not a line that's ever said, but that's the impression that I get from it. I'm so powerful, doesn't matter.
Is there life on Mars?
Maggie reaches the glacier and begins screaming, cracking it wide open. Adelaide begins the detonation sequence for Action 5. The Doctor sends the super-fast gadget robot to the TARDIS and remote controls it to bring the TARDIS to him. They all enter the TARDIS just as the base explodes. Arriving in front of Adelaide's home, Mia can't handle the reality of what has happened, so she runs off, and Yuri goes after her.
So in all the nitpicking we've been doing, one of the things that I thought of was like, why don't you just go to get the TARDIS to like a remote control and then get out of there? That would be the end of the episode.
Have they ever established a remote control?
No,
for the
but
TARDIS?
I'm just saying that there could have been some techno speak to get the TARDIS as opposed to getting the robot to the TARDIS. But that's the reason why we don't do that, because there's no drama in that.
Right.
And that's why he parked the TARDIS so far away.
Yes. Or maybe why the TARDIS parked itself so far away.
Right.
Oh yeah, the TARDIS is going, we shouldn't be here. We shouldn't be here.
Oh, I like that, actually.
We didn't really talk much about that moment too. When what was the second in command's name?
Ed.
When Ed sacrificed himself. Well, actually, he didn't sacrifice himself but when he held on as long as he could from being changed to detonate the ship, I thought that was really great.
I like that scene.
But that's one thing I didn't understand. When Steffi turned, her eyes didn't change either. So it's only the men whose eyes changed.
I thought that too. I think there are different, not species, but there are just different types of these same alien. One was more in charge, another one's more of a drone.
And there's just a lack of continuity or explanation.
I rationalized it away that Steffi was already giving up by watching the video, that she was converted much quicker, and you could see that Ed was fighting back. And so that's why it took the water longer to infect him.
Or it just reacts with testosterone.
There you go.
Or estrogen. Who knows?
Or maybe Maggie the actress can't. Her eyes couldn't take the contact lenses, so they had to come up with some quick solution.
That's what I think really happened. The actress went, I'm already in enough hell.
I do feel for her. Or all of them with the water. It's too much.
The Doctor tells Adelaide that she can see her family again. Adelaide realizes that what inspired her granddaughter no longer exists. The Doctor tells her that she can still inspire her granddaughter, but she doesn't believe him. History has changed because of him, and no one should have that much power. The Doctor says he knows what he is doing and has saved little people before, but no one as important as her. She is very angry at him and wonders who decides who is little and who is important. What he has done is wrong, and she doesn't care who he is. She goes inside her home and commits suicide, restoring history. The Doctor hears the shot and realizes that he has gone too far. Ood Sigma appears before him, and he wonders if this is the end. Ood Sigma disappears, and the Doctor answers his own question. No. It is not his time. He leaves in the TARDIS quickly.
And the cloister bell is ringing in the TARDIS, so even the TARDIS is mad at the Doctor.
Yeah, the TARDIS knows something is wrong.
It doesn't even say I've gone too far.
Yep.
He says that.
And we've seen a lot of people sacrifice themselves in this show, but have we ever seen anyone commit suicide? You could argue that this is also a sacrifice, but it doesn't feel that way. She's the only one who does it by her own hand, rather than somebody leaping in front of a train or you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
The steward in Midnight throws herself out with the creature.
But
Jade burns up.
Yeah, but they're all reacting to something that's happening.
That's true. They're not committing suicide.
They're not.
Well, the steward's committing suicide.
Technically, yes. No one, but I see it as the same sort of thing. In fact, I see it as something stronger because she actually has to. It's her. It's all comes from within, whereas the other ones are just giving into a force that's already there.
Right.
Which
it feels different. It feels different than the other deaths.
Yeah, this one is more like the doctor took away her ability to go down with the ship. The captain always goes down with the ship, and the doctor took that away from her. So then makes her decision for destroying everything, it makes her feel bad. Because if she went down with it, that would be a truly heroic thing to do. And this way she escaped this way is not heroic. He took away her heroism.
So you think she's doing it out of self-pity, not out of altruism?
I think it's not just self-pity. It's more of it's guilt.
So you don't think her motivation for taking her life is so the timeline is fixed?
No, because her death is still on Earth.
Yeah, but we
the
saw
timeline
that
can't be fixed.
But it did get fixed.
No, because
It got fixed because Mia and what's
Yuri.
his name? Yuri told the true story. So, but if they hadn't been saved too, it might not have gotten fixed.
Right, but they were saved too, and then it said there that Captain Brooke's legacy intact.
Right. Which meant that for a time it was questioned.
Yes.
Whereas if she had died on Mars.
Right, so possibly
her legacy would have never been questioned. She would have been a hero because she died on Earth by committing suicide. It did change the timeline a little bit.
It changed the details, but the outcome was still the same. I see it as a total altruistic moment.
Yeah, I'm with Josh.
But I don't disagree. I mean, you can see it that way, your way.
She's in charge. As the person ultimately in charge, everything that happens is her fault, and she truly believed that she was a true leader.
Right. She can't take the fact that she's still living when all this happened.
Yes.
It's self-pity.
That's not self-pity. There's difference.
All right.
She's like, oh, poor me, I'm still alive. No.
Well, it's pride. It's pride. Prideful self-pity.
Yes, pride and self-pity are not the same thing.
So she kills herself out of pride. I don't see it that way. I think she's tougher than that, and I think she realized she has to keep history intact.
Yeah, like survivor's guilt, Frank.
Yeah, I think it's more survivor's guilt, but I do agree more with Josh and Brian that she didn't see herself as important. It's like the whole timeline, Hall of History, what's supposed to happen. She was supposed to die this day. She's not going to let this arrogant prick make the change that's going to affect everybody on this planet, everything in the universe. It's like, I got to do what I can. I'm supposed to be dead.
Right. Because one of the
let's try and set that back.
A sentence in one form or another that kept being repeated is "You die this day." Right. And that was she has to die to keep history intact.
Her suicide always bothered me, and I think it was because it seemed odd to me that if she was killing herself because of that, she has to die this day so that her granddaughter will go on to do these great things. Like, it seems odd to me that same person wouldn't think, oh, how's this going to affect my granddaughter that I commit suicide?
Exactly.
In my apartment.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I can rationalize it later because Yuri and Mia are still alive. That's how I rationalize it in my head. Mm-hmm. But Adelaide in the moment is like, I'm supposed to die this day. And to me, it's her final act of utter leadership to kill herself.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, I'm sorry, but to me, it totally is. She's saying, I'm supposed to die today. I completely believe what you told me before. and I have to die. I
Right.
just have to die.
Yeah, I just feel like it glorifies the act of death by suicide.
And for me, I take it, because I remember the first time I watched it, and I take it a little further, that it's like the universe correcting itself, so it's almost out of her control, because when she goes into her apartment, it's like in slow motion.
you
There's
can't
no
change
dialogue.
time.
There's nothing. And it reminded me of the TV show 11/22/63, where everything that the guy does to prevent Kennedy's assassination happens anyway, because that's just the way time is.
Right.
So I take it a little further. It's as the universe or something else.
And why are the other two people still alive?
Because they're not the fixed points. It's not their granddaughter.
It's just Adelaide.
And them living, they're able to tell the story, which keeps her history intact.
Those two are the same as Caecilius's family in Fires of Pompeii. They're little people.
Slightly different, I think, because you can't just watch the show and get this. You have to pause at the end and read those little title cards of each person, of when they died and all that they altered. And it was saying that Mia and Yuri did not say anything right away. So there was this whole what happened with her. So the time had skewed. Because what happened with Adelaide? Why is she on the planet? What's going on? And it said later on, Yuri and Mia shed some light as to what happened, and that Adelaide did what she did to save the planet, because it was all questionable. Was she even on Mars? Why did she leave? She blew it up. What's going on? And I think it tainted who she was. But because of Yuri and Mia, they said enough. Even her granddaughter's card, said, after her grandmother's reputation was restored, type of thing. So they had a part to play. They had to be saved since the time altered, so they could try and set it back correctly. The ultimate sacrifice is what she did, and that helped them out.
Which is not suicide usually
Right.
for a hero. And she's a hero.
Yes.
I would argue that
And committing suicide is her heroic act.
I said I would argue that what she did is heroic. I mean, she was given her life back. She could have gone and seen her daughter and her granddaughter and had everything she always wanted, but my belief is that she did it with the understanding that it would correct the timeline, whether or not that's what I think she was thinking.
Yes.
And so to me, I think what she did was meant to be heroic. Whether it is or in reality or not, I don't know, but I believe that's what she believed.
Because it was that moment where she pressed the button to blow up the base. It was just an extension of that. The trigger of the gun was an extension of that button.
Exactly. I think that's what I think.
Yeah, me too.
But that's out of her character too. She was not someone who would kill people, including herself.
Yes, I think it was, if it was to save more, the greater good.
I mean, that's why that option 5 or whatever it is existed. She knew that she might have to one day use that.
That was to save the entire planet.
Can we just make something up in the timeline for me that she was infected and she felt it and she killed herself before anything went anywhere?
How about
That's
there was
why-
that drop of water.
why that
that
happened.
drop of water that hit her as they were running into the TARDIS.
Well, I think it's more
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
like
It's
the way
the
that
snow.
the Dalek didn't kill her. At this point, she has to die. So as much choice as the Dalek had in whether to shoot or not, that's as much choice as she had in this moment, whether to commit suicide or not. Like it's time correcting itself more than, I mean, we don't see her actually do it. So it could have been
Yeah.
an accident, like a gun in the
library.
in the library just went off because it had to.
Right. I mean, yeah, they could have written the next week Adelaide gets hit by a bus.
Final destination.
Could have been,
Yeah. As she crossed the street.
So we mentioned Lindsay Duncan playing Adelaide Brooke, and then Peter O'Brien plays Ed Gold. He's a real Australian, and he plays Rick Hollander in Glow. Alexander Mikic is Yuri Kerensky. He is Bosnian, and he plays a guard in Sherlock, the episode The Six Thatchers, and he's also a guard in Muppets Most Wanted. Gemma Chan plays Mia Bennett. We've seen her recently as Astrid in Crazy Rich Asians. She will be in Captain Marvel. She is Madame Ya Zhao in Fantastic Beasts. She is Mia also in Humans. She is Su Lin Yao in Sherlock the Blind Banker. Sharon Duncan Brewster plays Maggie Kane. She is Senator Pamlo in Rogue One. Joplin Chuk Sibtam plays Tarek. We've seen him before as Mark Grantham in Sarah Jane Adventures in Warriors of Kudlak. Okay, so this guy coming up is Alan Rusko. He plays Andy Stone, and he's done a lot. He's kind of like Paul Casey. He plays a couple of the Trade Federation members in episode 1. He's also Bib Fortuna and Plo Koon in episode 1. And he is a Mangalore in The Fifth Element. He's an Auton in the episode Rose. He's a Cheem Tree in The End of the World. A Sladine in Aliens of London. He is the android in The Parting of the Ways. He's also a clown in the Sarah Jane Adventures Day of the Clown. Cosima Shaw plays Steffi Ehrlich. She plays Leslie Richardson in the show Mars, and she's Patricia in V for Vendetta. That was one of the assistants to one of the TV producers. And then Michael Goldsmith is Roman Groom, and Paul Casey is Ood Sigma. And then the rest are just the family members of the people on the video. Okay, so there is a deleted scene that I mentioned earlier. Hold on, let me get that. In the deleted scene, the Doctor suggests that the Ice Warriors were unable to fully defeat the Flood, and this is what led them to flee the planet of Mars, resulting in their absence from the waters of Mars. That's why they're not on there. This was cut, but you only get the line of the Flood when the Doctor is talking to Captain Adelaide I think they're looking at the glacier.
Something about stopping the Flood.
Yeah, so the Flood was supposed to be this other bigger villain, but then I guess budgetary reasons and time, they couldn't include it. So that's why that line is there. Oh, and at the end of the episode, it is dedicated to Barry Letts, and he is the former Doctor Who producer and writer who died several weeks before this episode aired. And he was first on board with Doctor Who and the Silurians, that's the third Doctor, and he left in the episode Logopolis, which is the regeneration of the fourth Doctor into the fifth Doctor. So he was on Doctor Who for quite some time. The Waters of Mars won the 2010 Hugo Award in the category for Best Dramatic Presentation Short Form. So quick story. When this was announced to air, it was in 2009 as the Thanksgiving special. San Diego Comic-Con in 2009. They had a panel with Russell T. Davies and David Tennant, and I think Julie Gardner and Euros Lynn, I believe. And me and Brian were lucky enough to be at that panel. So it was nice to see David Tennant and Russell T. Davies before they were done. And we got the trailer for Waters of Mars. I think that was the premiere trailer.
Yeah, we also got the trailer for End of Time.
Yeah, and when they played the trailer for Waters of Mars, it was 4 knocks at that bulkhead when the creature, or I think it's Andy, is knocking, and it is 4 knocks. But then when you see it replayed other times, it's 3 knocks.
Because that's all he's gonna get.
Yes.
But in the episode, it was 3.
In the trailer, they
That's
were
what I'm
teasing
saying.
the 4 knocks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that, I was like, did we see that? Yes, we did see that. So that was nice to see David Tennant kind of saying his farewell to the fans. And this is the last time we see the blue suit. It's gone after this. And we get the blue lights back with it's on the gun, and it's on the other things in Gadget.
Mm-hmm.
This is also the last time that Graham Harper directs a Doctor Who episode.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Is there life on
All right, so Waters of Mars. Who is this episode good for? Or more specifically, this episode is good for who? A new viewer, a casual viewer, a fan of the show, or a diehard?
Well, my gut reaction is to say a new Who viewer, because I think it's a good standalone story, but all this emotional stuff that we're talking about at the end is out of normal character for him, so I think it's kind of out of context, and I don't think a new viewer would appreciate the gravity of it all, so I'll say casual.
Yeah, I guess I agree with that too.
I was all ready to
I was
say...
going to say new, but they wouldn't get the emotional impact.
Yeah.
They have to wait a while. Yeah. Like I've had people see this like the third or fourth episode.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've introduced them to, and then it's like, all right, now watch Waters of Mars. So yeah, casual.
Yeah, that I have a hard time putting this in a category because I don't particularly like this episode. And I feel like up until the end, it is good for everyone. I feel like everyone can get the same amount of enjoyment out of watching this episode. I agree with Josh that it appears standalone. But then I thought, well, if I did show this to someone who had never seen Doctor Who before, and my first thought is like it would turn them off because he's so just manic at the end of the episode. But then maybe they would be interested in watching more to find out how he got to that point. If I was there saying like, look, this is kind of uncharacteristic for this character. But yeah, it's hard for me because I don't know. I'm just gonna say new. So it includes everyone. I think everyone in all our categories will get the same enjoyment out of this episode.
I have to say, I am not a fan of space horror movies, especially stories surrounding Mars. I feel like there isn't like a really good, honest, like hard sci-fi look. I guess, what was the Martian? Was that the recent one?
That's not horror.
That's not horror.
Survival.
That's survival, right? Like that's probably
The closest.
The closest, but still not the Martian movie I want. And so this one, yes, it's not my favorite. And I do get annoyed at being promised or thinking that I'm about to watch something a little more like hard science fiction and then having it flip into this more horror-like genre. But I think I'll go with casual as well because it does have some redeeming elements to it. The David Tennant's acting is great, especially next to Lindsay Duncan, who plays Adelaide Brooke. Like I think they do really have a nice chemistry together. Tonally, like we keep switching between kind of the hard horror and the kind of like the gadget and the flames coming out and that, which is, I know you want comic relief, but it just switches tones so much for myself that I don't enjoy it. But again, if you're into David Tennant acting and if you've watched a few episodes and understand like this is not the Doctor that we all love, then I'd say go for it. So casual viewer.
You know, just watching it and not thinking about it too much, I was like, it's okay. I didn't hate it. But then when I really think about it, I hate it. So I'm going to say for a new Who viewer, because they have no context to go about with the rest of it. So just new Who, just take it as a weird sci-fi kind of horror, kind of strange episode. And that's it.
Okay, well, I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I love this episode, and I'm not ashamed to say it. So I personally believe that if I were flipping through the channels and I happened to see this episode, I would be dying to watch more. So from my perspective and my taste, I would say New Who.
I never thought of a New Who viewer for this because it is so not the Doctor. We've talked about how he changes. But so I never showed to somebody to get them into watching Doctor Who. But like you said, if it's just a sci-fi show with that horror element, some people may really like this, and I could see that. And what Arlene said rings true for me as well. When you just watch it just to watch it without doing the podcast or trying to dissect it, it's got some great elements. I like the characters. I like the interaction between the characters. I like the storyline. I just think this whole episode is done badly. And partly the reason, makes sense because they're dealing with water and there's problems with dealing on a set with water, with makeup and all that. But I'm going to go out on my own and go for fan.
One quick thing. The Bowie Base One interior. Do you recognize the interior, Brian?
No.
It is the Torchwood hub.
It is not.
It's the Torchwood hub. It was, they used it because Children of Earth had already exploded it.
Oh. Wow.
And they needed a location that could be flooded.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
Wow, that's good.
All right, for me, this is one of my favorite episodes. I love that we have this great discussion about it. So many differences of opinions. I enjoy that it starts off hard sci-fi and then turns into horror because I love horror. Anyway, I'm not going to go too much into this, but I know somebody that stumbled upon this episode as a new viewer. This was the first Doctor Who they ever watched, and they are now a Doctor Who watcher. So it can be a new Who viewer. So that's where I will put it. But personally, I would put it under casual just because of all those references that you wouldn't get from being a new Who viewer. But I have the example of somebody that can watch it as a new viewer. And like what we mentioned before about being soaked in water, we all know what that's like. So we know how uncomfortable that is and how creepy that can be. Yeah, this is one of my favorite episodes. So that wraps up Waters of Mars. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time when the future becomes the present.
You've just listened to an episode of Who Knew.
Our wonderful theme music is by Michael Grady.
Find him on Facebook at The Universe Explodes.
All our episodes are engineered by Allburn.
You can also find this show in several places.
Follow us on Twitter at Who Knew Podcast.
Subscribe, review, and listen to us on iTunes and Stitcher.
Or our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Who Knew Podcast.
Comment on our Facebook page.
Please leave comments, reviews, and click like to help support Who Knew Podcast.
Also listen to us on your Amazon Echo by enabling a podcast skill.
All of our episodes are on whoknewpodcast.com.
This podcast is inspired by Doctor Who,
the longest-running sci-fi show in history.
And especially the revival spearheaded by Russell T. Davis.
Thanks to Russell,
Sidney Newman,
Verity Lambert,
Ron Grainer,
and all those involved in the adventures of our favorite Time Lord.
Your work continues to inspire and entertain.
Yeah.
I can hear Heather.
Oh man, but we can't.
You can't hear Auburn or any of the group.
and we can't hear her.
And she's only on, like, if Harleen can hear her.
Frank, tell Heather that if she wants to be on a podcast, we have to hear her.
Heather, if you want to be on the podcast, we have to hear you. That's what Josh was saying. Tell Heather that.
Heather, Frank, tell Josh that I said I'm doing the best I can.
Oh, he can hear you.
Oh.
Wait, I heard that laugh.
Okay, I'm gonna hit record. So it should be good. I won't touch anything ever again on my computer.
It's all good.
The other cat's like, I hear a food noise.
This has been Food for Felines with Josh.
Josh is
Heather can't hear anything, right? No, she can't.
Can't even hear anything.
I can hear you two. I can't hear anyone in the room.
I can hear Heather, and she can hear me.
I can
It
hear
just
Heather
dropped.
as well.
She cannot hear
We
anybody
can't
in
hear
the
Heather.
room.
I don't know. I'm sorry, Heather. Sorry, Heather.
They said she's sorry. He's sorry. Auburn
It's
said
your
sorry.
fault.
It's your fault.
Lips.
Oh, he knew that one.
Can you hear this now?
Heather, can you say anything? Can you hear them?
I
Skype
could
now.
hear them for 2 seconds and then they left.
Just have
Of
one.
course I do.
Plug in from Skype.
There. All right, now we can hear Heather.
So unmute it. They want to be able to hear you.
But now it's too busy. That's not going to be...
unplug this.
I
This
just
one
muted
though.
my outfit.
So, Arlene, turn your Skype off. Or something.
No, she doesn't have Skype.
Oh, that's
I don't
right.
have. I'm not on Skype.
Oh, that's
Oh
good.
wait, she's back here.
What the hell?
Yeah, I see her now connected to us. To
Wait,
Zen.
we don't hear her over the speaker, though.
He muted
I
it.
muted it.
He muted
Oh.
it because
You
of the
muted
feedback.
this.
All right.
You want to turn yours?
Yeah.
Skype.
Turn this
The cat did it. The cat is licking her nose.
Wait.
Yes, we can hear you.
She doesn't have her earphones in yet.
Ah, yeah. Hey, we can hear you. Nope, not yet. I thought that was her leaning in.
Can you hear me?
There we go. Yes, we can hear you now.
They can hear you.
Okay,
we can
everyone's
hear you.
connected right now. So quick and talk before someone falls off again.
Everyone's connected.
All right.
I'm hearing pounding. Is anyone else hearing the pounding?
Yeah, but not... Yeah, what's that?
Is it your cat?
Is your cat on there and it's a heartbeat?
No, and I don't hear anything.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, because it's like that's the only
Oh,
that's the only one that's showing a line for me
Oh, I see.
Oh, what is that?
with the sound.
Now it's stopped.
All right, well, now if
All
anyone
right.
listens to this podcast,
That's
they're going to
last.
be dead in 10 hours.
Yeah. Okay.
Now we turn for our program already in progress.
Well, then never mind. Strike that from the record.
I'm just saying.
Blah, 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 blah.